So Charlie, welcome. Happy to have you at my in my interview series. Um, just for people who don't know who you are, there's not many, but in case, you were born in London, UK. You played with Elton John, Kate Bush, Gary Moore,
Death is just a heartbeat
Pete Townshend, Tracy Ullman, and so many more. You were Elton's drummer from 85 to 97. Do I have the dates right?
98, yeah, 13 years.
98. And you were his drummer for Live Aid in 1985. You toured on 8 tours with him. You played on 5
Yeah.
of his albums, and you are featured on many compilation albums. You also played on many soundtracks. I checked your resume before, so I was surprised. 2 James Bond movies,
Yeah, because
Tomorrow Never Dies and Quantum of Solace.
David Arnold was a friend of mine. We actually met at Pete Townshend's studio while we were doing David Knopfler's album, Mark Knopfler's brother. Well, after he left Dire Straits, he did his first solo album, I think. And David Arnold and I played on the solo album. We became friends. And then David Arnold, I don't know if you know, but he started doing movie soundtracks. He did a movie soundtrack for a friend of John Jorgensen's, actually, a guy called Dean Devlin.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know who Dean Devlin is.
I don't. You're going to tell me.
I am. He had presented a screenplay along with a friend of his called Roland Emmerich to a movie company. And I can't remember who distributed this, but I know that they basically had to mortgage everything in order to make the movie because they didn't quite get enough funding. Anyway, this screenplay and the movie was Stargate.
Wow.
The original Stargate. And David Arnold did the music for it. And I think he did it for nothing. He did it for a cut of the potential profits. And of course, it was a huge hit. Plus, you get Stargate 2, and you got all of the TV shoot-offs, like the Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis. And I mean, the franchise is huge. And then Dean Devlin wrote the screenplay for Independence Day as well. Again, I believe with Roland Emmerich. So that was a massive hit. And of course, they had Independence Day 2, and then they did Godzilla. But John Jorgensen met him in the 1980s. They co-wrote some songs together. And I just replaced the drums on the songs that they did. Actually, I did a session with John here in my studio where I played real drums on 7 songs that they'd written with machine drums. And apparently Dean was absolutely over the moon about it. He was so excited because he said, I was a bit embarrassed about the original demos because they were a little bit kind of cheesy, but he said the real drums have brought that to life. So there's a big connection there. And John, because he knew Dean Devlin, the very first session I did for Tomorrow Never Dies overlapped with the Big Picture sessions.
Okay.
With Elton. So John was in London doing the Big Picture. And one evening I had to get my guy to take another drum kit across to Air Studios so I could do the first cue for Tomorrow Never Dies, which is you know how most Bond movies have like a 10-minute opening session. Well, we did that with a 77-piece orchestra and an entire band, all live. And John Jorgensen came to have a look. He came to kind of experience it and meet Dave Arnold. So I remember John coming with me to the session after we'd finished with Elton, and then after that we finished the Big Picture album, and that autumn I finished doing the soundtrack for Tomorrow Never Dies.
Wow.
But so John was present for the very first kind of 10-minute bit where he blows everything up, and then they get to the theme music. Yeah. But yeah, that's how I met Dave Arnold through the sessions that I did about 10 years prior. And then
It,
later on, 20 years later, he was doing Quantum of Solace, and I was chatting with him about coming into town, and he said, "Oh, can you be in town on this date?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually coming in about 3 days later." He said, "Can you change your flight, because I'll book you for a session for the Quantum of Solace, because it's almost the 20-year anniversary of us doing Tomorrow Never Dies." And so I went down to the studio to Air Lyndhurst, and I had my kit set up, and we did the last couple of cues for the movie, and all of the orchestra were just looking in the drum booth to see who's playing drums. Something like 80% of the people were the same people from 20 years previous.
wow. It's always in the music business, music industry. It's always you know people who know people who know other people, and that's how everybody gets gigs and gets.
It's all about networking. Yeah, it really is all about networking. And actually, Julie, my web girl, she's been trying to get me to write my autobiography, and we were having a conversation about it. And I was saying to her, well, I don't really want to write yet another "and then I played with" book, which would be so boring. Oh, then I played with him, then I played with him, and then I played, and it was great, and it was great. And at some point, I was talking about the fact that there were certain people particularly in my early days, for whom I'm very grateful that they took a risk with me, or they saw something in me, they saw some potential. And Julie turned around and said, "Gratitude." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Gratitude. That's your angle.
That's your angle, yeah.
Just write a chapter about a person that you are grateful to, and explain why you are grateful to them for what they did, and when they did it." And she said, "It doesn't have to be in chronological order. You can just write a chapter about the various people that were part of you becoming successful." And so I've been doing that. I've been writing a chapter at a time.
Nice.
But as you
Can't
say,
wait.
it's all, okay?
Can't wait to read that, because I'm sure it will be. You have such an amazing career, so
I have.
we might find some people we never knew worked with you in that book.
Yes. Well, and I'm going to be creating articles that we can post on the website. So basically, some of it will be previewed on the website, and I'll be collecting it together. And eventually, I'll be able to move it into chronological order, and you'll start in 1973 and go up to 2025 or 2026. But yeah, 5 decades has been pretty amazing, really.
Really, how did you start working with, well, let's say Kate Bush or Elton John? How did you start working with them?
Oh, Kate Bush. Well, in 1975, I answered an advert in a magazine called Melody Maker for a band that was signed to a record label. This band was called Conkers. Horrible name, but never mind. The band was called Conkers, and they were a 5-piece band. They were signed to Essex Music Publishing and Cube Records. And their drummer had had an accident, poor guy, and he and I have stayed friends, where basically he lost the use of his left arm. He was left-handed as well. He had a motorcycle accident where he severed a nerve in his left arm, and his left arm was paralyzed. So he could no longer play drums. So they had this panic where they did auditions, and I went and did an audition, and I got the gig. And so I was signed to Cube Records with them. The bass player in that band was a guy called Del Palmer, who became, in the end, the band kind of, everything fell apart, and we all went our separate ways, went off and joined different bands. Del Palmer, in the meantime, met this 16-year-old girl called Kate Bush, who was on a development deal through AMI, and he became her boyfriend and co-producer and sound engineer. And that's how I met Kate, through Del Palmer. About a year and a half later, Del phoned me up and said, I'm working with this female artist and she's my girlfriend, and can you come and meet? So I drove over to East London, Southeast London, to this really nice apartment, and I met Kate there for the first time. And I heard the original demos that got her the EMI deal. But then I wasn't in the band because I was in another band at the time. And then their drummer was a Brazilian. They went to do a TV show at the very beginning of her first album. They went to do a TV show in Germany, and it turned out that he was in England without a work permit, so he couldn't leave the UK. And so I got a panic phone call saying, what are you doing tomorrow? And can you be on a flight to Frankfurt to play this TV show with Kate Bush? Live TV show as well, not even lip syncing. It was live. It was
they do that in Germany, I think, more than they did in UK.
Yeah. It was a show called Bios Bahnhof, Bios railway station, and it took place in a rail shed, and all the artists were on railway trucks, and they wheeled them in and then they wheeled them back off again. And this guy Bio, I can't remember his full name, but he would interview Kate, and then we played a song, and then interview someone else, and they would play a song, and then we play another song. And somewhere there's a broadcast on YouTube of Bios Bahnhof of Kate doing 2 songs. And I had to learn those songs on the plane and arrive. I look at eye level, it isn't good enough. And then I find it out when I take out the drive. And then from that moment, I was back in the band. I was in the band. I was in Kate's band until late 1978. And then I joined the Tom Robinson band for the whole of 79. So, but then Kate got me back in the mid 80s. By which time I was one of the top session players in England. You know, she'd heard me on Nick Kershaw's stuff, and Elton heard me on Nick Kershaw's stuff, and poor old Nick Kershaw lost me to Elton. And Nick Kershaw played guitar and sang backup vocals with George Michael on Nikita, on that song Nikita. So yeah,
it's all linked. And I heard,
again, it's everything's connected, all connected.
And I heard did you have a broken bone or something when you played for Elton the first time, when you auditioned for him?
Yes. Not when I auditioned. Well, I got booked. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Slightly embarrassing story. And I had to really keep it quiet from Elton. I was doing a lot of motor racing at that time. I was racing in the Touring Car Championship. And I was booked over the Easter bank holiday weekend of 1985. I was racing my Golf GTI at Brands Hatch Race Circuit. And we were in the middle of the race and it started to rain. And I went through one of the fastest corners that goes downhill. There's a big corner called Paddock Hill Bend, along with the rest of the field. And we arrived at that corner and it was soaking wet. And about 1/3 of the entire field went off. We went off, basically. My car turned over, ended up back on its wheels with no windshield, and I broke 2 ribs. I got out of the car, I was fine, but then later I was having trouble breathing, and I went down to the hospital near Sidcup General Hospital, which is near Brands Hatch. And they said, oh yeah, you've broken 2 ribs. Nothing we can do about it. Here's some painkillers, get over it. And the next day was the first session with Elton. So I arrived at the studio with my drum kit in the car, and I gave the assistant engineer £20 to help me in with my drum kit, and I swore him to silence. I said, "Don't, whatever you do, don't say nothing. No, silence. Just don't say anything." But I have 2 broken ribs, so I can't lift anything, and I can't laugh, cough, or sneeze. And
And
then
Elton is always cracking jokes.
is always
So
cracking jokes, and I was trying not to laugh. You know, it was easy not to cough or sneeze, but when Elton's cracking jokes, you can't stop. And of course, I couldn't tell him, "No, stop, stop, stop," because I have 2 broken ribs. You know.
you never told him?
No, never told him. Certainly not then, anyway. But yeah, so I had 2 broken ribs on my very first session with Elton.
That's funny though.
There were certain painful moments, yes. This was the Ice on Fire album.
Okay, okay.
You know, in the Ice on Fire album, Elton was trying out different rhythm sections. And he even used the guys from Queen. He used Roger Taylor and John Deacon for some of it. And he used Mel Gaynor from Simple Minds with, who played bass on that? I can't remember. I think it might have been Pino Palladino, but I can't remember who played bass on that. And then the other rhythm section he was using, who played on Nikita, amongst other things, was Dave Mattox. He and I were very good friends. We were swapping sessions. We were both very busy session players. We were swapping sessions all the time. Dave Mattox and David Payton.
Yes.
And I did it with a different bass player, a guy I'd been working with a lot, who I did the Nick Kershaw sessions with, in fact. And we had 3 days, and we tracked Cry to Heaven, Wrap Her Up, which was based on something he heard us playing when we were getting a drum sound and getting sounds. Elton said, record that. I want to play something, do something. So we got a co-write on Wrap Her Up. And then we did This Town as well in those 3 days. And then Elton called me back to do Slow Rivers with Cliff Richard, which was on the album as a duet, I think. So I ended up on 4 tracks on that album, one of which I co-wrote, which is great.
Nice. And
I mean,
then
it's the first time I meet Elton, I get to co-write a song.
and then he kept you on the band.
And then, then when we were doing the Slow Rivers session, which was about 3 or 4 weeks later, so it was somewhere in April or May of '85, Elton said, and almost to the word, he said, "I'm doing this little charity show at Wembley for Midge Ure and Bob Geldof. Well, would you possibly be interested in being a member of the band? We have to play about 45 minutes. We'll need to rehearse about 5 days beforehand. And it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun." And that was what he said. Yeah, that was
a little tiny charity show.
I'm doing this little charity show at Wembley. I mean, when he said Wembley, I thought maybe it was the Wembley Arena, which holds like 12,000 people, not Wembley Stadium. You know, the first show I ever did with Elton was at Wembley Stadium in front of 72,000 people and half the world watching on TV.
That's crazy. And it was a show that the sound didn't work well. You couldn't hear anything.
No, yes, absolutely, yeah. Because it was, it was festival style. Bands came on one after the other, and they had to get sounds. I had no monitors, but I could see Elton's foot, and Elton always stomps his foot in time. So, and I think we started off with Benny, and I could barely hear anything. I think it was Benny and the Jets.
I think so.
And I was watching Elton's foot and going, bum, bum, literally like that. Later on, when we did Don't Go Breaking My Heart, poor Kiki D had no monitors for the whole song at all. And when you listen back and you listen how incredibly well she sang without hearing herself, you just know what an incredible artist she is, what an amazing voice, and what an incredible talent Kiki D is. But she has the most amazing intonation. The fact that she could sing in tune without hearing herself or Elton or anything on stage is pretty amazing, really.
It is. It is. She's great. I saw her at Dodger Stadium for the last show there with Elton. She
Oh,
was
yes.
great. She was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, she was great.
Love Pauline.
What things happen when you play live all the time. You had to replace Billy Joel's drummer at last minute because he was sick, something like that.
Yeah. Well, the very first face-to-face tour we did, which was in 1994, summer of 94, the second show we ever played, which was at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. Now, you know the format. We had Elton always chose to go on first, and then Billy would go on second. And then at the end, we'd do about 10 songs, alternating Elton and Billy songs with both bands on stage, with both drummers, everybody playing. And if we were doing an Elton song, they would favor me on drums, but Liberty would play. And if we were doing a Billy Joel song, I would hold back, and basically the lead drummer, as it were, would be Liberty DeVito. So I never got a chance to see the show at all in pre-production or anything, because we did separate pre-productions, and then we did a test show, I think, at the Dome in Atlanta. And then the first three shows were at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. So the second night, we did our little set. I came off and I was toweling myself down backstage. And I was talking to my drum rep who lived in New Jersey. So that was the closest show for him. So I'm chatting with my premier drum rep, blah, blah, blah. Our band coordinator comes skidding in to the compound in a golf cart and says, "Charlie, Liberty's down. You've got to get on stage." And I went, "Yeah, funny, ha, 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 ha." Said, "No, seriously, he's got food poisoning and they're carrying him off to hospital. They've had to put something down his throat to keep him breathing. And his throat was closing up. He's got to go. He's gone to hospital, and Billy's on his own doing some songs like solo." So I jumped on the cart and I went back, and basically the band helped me. I mean, the good news is I was a huge Billy Joel fan, so I knew Billy's songs, but I didn't know the live versions, the extended, because they always extend the songs and live. I didn't know the live versions. And T-Bone Walk was the bass player at the time. He was there kind of pointing me through stuff like, "Okay, stop now, or start again," all of that. And Billy kept coming up and kind of give me coaching instructions on certain songs. I remember he came up, he said, he said, "I have to explain something to Charlie." And first of all, he said, Charlie, Elton's drummer Charlie is going to play with us. So I got to explain something to Charlie. So he ran over and he's facing me, coming, "Okay, so this next song is kind of a reggae. It's a kind of a shuffle. It's, and I said, "What's it called?" And he said, "Only the Good Die Young." And I said, "Oh, I know that song." And he went back to the microphone and he literally got to the microphone and said, "He says he knows this one. We shall see." And then he started, and I played my way through it, and he got the crowd chanting my name and everything. I mean, so I played the whole show. I played at the very end as well. I played 3 hours and 45 minutes, and came off the stage, and everybody slapping me on the back, and I've saved the show, whatever, and it was an amazing experience anyway, just playing for Billy Joel. And in the bus on the way back, Davey said, Charlie, you and I are going over to a local Philadelphia radio station to do a show at to go and talk on the show at midnight. So Davey and I went to a local FM station that had heard about this, and we sat at the station and we spent like 2 hours at the radio station doing the show. And then the next day was another show at Veterans, and by this time Liberty was back. He was fine. He was okay. I saw him, beforehand. He was okay. And then I got the call about half an hour before the show was due to start. I got summoned to Billy's room, and I thought, okay, what's going on? So I went to Billy's dressing room and walked in, and Billy's band were all standing there, and they all gave me a standing ovation, including Liberty. And Billy handed me a card, and I've got the card somewhere in my storage back at home. The card was a girl wearing nothing but cowboy chaps, with her butt facing, like she's looking over her shoulder with her butt, sticking out. And it said, "Thanks, Charlie, you saved our asses," on the front. And I opened it up, and inside was $2,000 taped to it in cash.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
good old Billy.
Must have been something though to
it was amazing experience. And the Elton John band had several meals courtesy of Billy Joel. I used the cash, we went to a really nice steakhouse on a night off in Philadelphia, the whole band, and I just paid for it like that. So thank you, Billy.
What an experience though. What's the hardest part when you tour? What's the hardest part of touring?
Well, not being home. I mean, it's funny because in the early days, being on tour was incredibly exciting, and I don't think there was any downside to it. But I do think my relationships suffered. Yeah, it was incredibly difficult for my first marriage, that's for sure. I think my second wife was a little bit more. She was a bit more understanding about the situation. But again, relationships always suffered because of being away for long periods of time.
And what's the most fun part about touring?
Most fun part?
Yes.
Well, particularly with Elton, who never really, we had a set list, but he would constantly expand on stuff. He was always changing stuff. We had some incredible nights. We played some incredible shows to massive audiences. We played the Olympic, the big World Cup stadium in Mexico City 2 nights in a row, and I've never heard applause. I've never heard an audience just quite like that in Mexico. Brazil in 1995, yes. The last show we played in Rio. Yeah, in Rio. That show, the audience, I mean, you see it on the video, 1992 Barcelona, which was the last European show, which also is a DVD. And we played the Olympic Stadium there, which the following week was being used for track and field. I mean, that, it's hard to, you can't replace that. It's,
Which tour was your favorite and why?
Which
tour was your favorite and why?
Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, November, December 1986, was pretty amazing. And I made so many friends. I mean, I've still got friends. I have a friend of mine who is semi-retired. She's teaching. Sorry about Nikki.
That's okay.
And she was one of the first violinists. Mary and I, we stayed friends for decades. But I think that was well, it was, apart from anything, it was a trendsetter, wasn't it? Really,
It wasn't done before. Nobody had done that
not
before.
really, not with a full 90-piece. So some people had used chamber orchestra size, or had a string section, but not
But
a
not with a
full.
tour.
Not with a
Not
tour.
touring.
Yeah, they'd
Yeah.
done one single show, maybe. There's a very famous show in Canada with Procol Harum, with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra. Do you know about that live album? It's a really good album too. I really enjoyed it. But again, the orchestra there is a chamber size orchestra. So it's about half. We were traveling with 92 other musicians, plus a 13-piece Elton John band, we occupied an entire Airbus 320.
That's crazy. And I read that you performed 26 concerts in Australia with that tour.
Yeah,
You took 5 months of planning.
apparently.
So it's
Yeah,
and half of the show was only the band, and half of the show was the orchestra after that.
yeah. Actually, it was more
Um,
like 1/3, 2/3, I think.
okay.
We would do about an hour and 15 minutes of the rock show, and then Elton would start with the orchestra only for the first 5 or 6 songs. He would do some of the quieter songs, and then gradually, bit by bit, we would come on. I think the first song, well, Elton did "Sorry" seems to be the hardest word, and Ray came on to do the percussion, to do the vibraphone solo, and then we would come on for "The King Must Die." I think was the first song we played as a band, and then after that, it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and yeah. And I think we played about 2 hours with the orchestra and about an hour and 15 minutes with the rock show.
Yes, those shows were more than 3 hour long.
Yeah,
Crazy, crazy.
definitely more than 3 hours.
Who was in the band? You had Davey, you, Ray, Fred Mendel. Who was
Fred
there?
Mandel, David Payton on bass, Jodie Linscott on percussion as well. She was my recommendation. And then we had 3 backing singers. We had Shirley, and then Alan Carvell and Gordon Neville. Shirley Lewis. And so Shirley lives in Los Angeles now. But yeah, we had Gordon Neville and Alan Carvell, so 3 backing singers, and then 4-piece horn section.
Okay.
So
And
that was
how did the musicians of the orchestra react playing with a rock band?
Well, we were lucky with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra because I think the average age was around 30.
Okay, so they knew about Elton.
Almost everybody. Well, the older musicians were given the choice: do you want to go on this rock tour or not? And I think a few of them just said, no, I only want to play classical music and I'm getting off. The only person on the actual tour, the only dissenting voice on the tour, was a person who they couldn't replace because he was the harpist. He played the harp. And he was from Wales, I believe, originally. But I remember he was in his late 50s, early 60s. Wasn't terribly happy at the beginning to be on the tour. But, by the end, he came round completely. But we were in rehearsals. I remember the very first rehearsal. We played Brisbane, the first show. In fact, we opened the brand new Brisbane Entertainment Centre. We were the first band there. And we did a rehearsal 2 days before. I think we rehearsed for 2 days prior to the first show. And we were in rehearsal. Towards the end, James Newton Howard is going through the charts. I mean, he'd written out charts for me because he knew I read music. So he'd written out charts for me. And we're all kind of settling in. I'm being asked if I can play a little bit quieter, and I'd already worked with some orchestral players in England on sessions, and I knew that it's better for me to lay back a bit, not really play out, because they didn't want to put screens all around me. They wanted it to be open, So we're at the very beginning of Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and I'm playing, I'm really going for it. That's as loud as I'm going to get. And I look round, and one of the violinists, who maybe is 28 years old, girl, is sitting with her violin on her lap going. And I thought, okay, we're fine, everything's fine. If she is like getting down to us before she starts playing, then there's no problem at all. We're not, I looked round and I instantly breathed a sigh of relief and said, okay, we're fine.
Yeah, and I saw the recording, and that song is always like one of the best when you play live. Saturday is out of this world. Rio, same thing. Saturday's incredible.
Well, and for us on that particular occasion, it was the big blowout at the very end. It was just the last song we played with the orchestra.
And the balloons and all the
And the
stuff coming
balloons and
out.
the confetti coming down off the ceiling and everything going crazy. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. I don't know if you know, but Genesis came to see us that last night.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, they were playing. We played 12 nights at the Sydney Entertainment Centre. We played 4 shows, 1 day off, 4 shows, 1 day off, and then the final 4 shows, just to try and save, because Elton was having problems with his voice, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
And he was using the rock set to clear out his vocal cords so he could sing more clearly during the orchestral set. One Horse Town was not the best vocal he'd ever sang, because it was the opening song, and One Horse Town was one of the ones that he used to really blow out his vocal cords. But so we basically Genesis came to see the last show, the 26th show we'd done. So by that time we knew what we were doing, although it was a bit of an interesting evening, because 10 minutes before we were supposed to do a live broadcast to the whole of that hemisphere, New Zealand, Australia, and parts of Japan and Southeast Asia. It was a live simultaneous broadcast. And 10 minutes before broadcast, Elton got into his car and headed back to the hotel.
Oh my God.
And John Reid had to give chase through the streets of Sydney. Anyway, so the Genesis guys are playing the next 3 nights. So they come to see the show. So they're coming in to the compound in like a 15-seater van. And I mean, Phil Collins told me this. So they're coming in and they see a limousine leaving with Elton in the back of the limousine. And this is like 10, 15 minutes before the show. And Pete, basically Phil said, is the show going to happen? And the rest of the guys said, look, let's go in anyway. Let's go and sit down and see what happens. And of course, John Reid gave chase, hunted him down, got him back. And within seconds, we're all on stage in the blackout. And within seconds of the live broadcast coming on, Elton was there sitting at the piano. And the show went off amazingly. And it was a night of, it was so full of emotion, because Elton knew he had vocal cord surgery the next day.
Yes.
The way the stage was set up, I was over what they call stage left, which is to the right of the audience. I was over there and I was facing Elton. Elton was kind of on the other side of the stage, and we're opposite ends of the stage. And I could see Elton. I needed to see him for the cues, really. And we're playing Don't Let the Sun Go Down. And I look over and I think, wow, Elton's sweating a lot. Then I realized it wasn't sweat. I realized he was weeping. It had got to him. just the fact that the song, that the words, "Don't let the sun go down on me," and the realization that it was
The day
possible
after,
that
yeah.
he would never be able to sing again. The next day he was going in for vocal cord surgery, and there was a possibility he'd never be able to sing again. So it hit him
Wow.
halfway through "Don't Let the Sun Go Down," and he's singing with tears streaming down his cheeks.
The sun got down on me. All I serve myself is always someone else I see.
I could see it from where I was, literally zoom in on him, and there he was crying. So it was a very emotionally charged evening, and it was amazing that it was captured on DVD, really, when you think about it. But
Wow.
we're coming off stage at the end of the show, and we're walking off round the back, and Phil Collins jumps down from where they were sitting and walks backstage next to me, and he turned to me and he said, "Well, Charlie, how the fuck do we follow that?" And
Yeah.
I kind of felt sorry for Genesis, because there they were playing 3 nights after we'd done these 12 sellout nights, and the whole thing was so euphoric. It was just, yeah, anyway. And I saw him later on, the following spring, following March, at Elton's birthday party in 87, March 25th, 1987. And he came to Elton's birthday party, and I was there with my brand new girlfriend at the time. And nothing impressed her more. She was a singer-songwriter. Nothing impressed her more than the fact that we were sitting there, and Phil Collins came over and slapped his hand on my back and said, "Charlie, what a fucking great show that was in Sydney."
Oh wow. People were there and they can't get over how amazing it was. So
It was, yeah, it was unbelievable. It just, yeah. So that was the emotionally, and in terms of satisfaction as well, it was one of the most satisfying tours we ever did. I mean, it was a massive success, and the DVD goes to show it. It really does.
what was the most challenging thing on that tour?
Um, I think originally it was just keeping my drums back there so that I didn't spill over the orchestra too much. Um, you
How
know,
do you record that? Because I'm thinking Clive Franks had to record everything. How
well,
can
no,
you
it was
record?
Clive was doing the out front sound, but Gus Dudgeon was in a mobile back. He was actually mixing the orchestra into a stereo pair so that Clive could use the orchestra. So Clive was mixing the band out front, and also the orchestra was on literally just a pair of faders, um, to make it easy. So Gus Dudgeon was submixing the entire orchestra backstage on a mobile studio, and then it was up to him to record the last 4 shows so that we had audio recordings of the last 4 shows.
But that must have been, how do you do that? With the orchestra, it's magical.
Well,
It's,
between Gus and Clive, it was a masterpiece, really.
yes, yes, crazy, crazy good. Anyways, you must be so proud to have been uh, part of that tour, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
nothing compares. Um, which Elton song was the one you liked the most to perform live?
That's really
And
easy.
which one did you hate the most, or did you least
Okay, the one
like?
I liked playing the most, Burn Down the Mission, because the tempo changes were all up to me. I had to drive the ship. And when we did it with the orchestra, I was driving the supertanker. I was the pilot in charge of the supertanker. I was doing all the tempo changes. So for me, yeah, technically that was the hardest song, but probably the most satisfying song to play.
And which one did you like the least to perform?
Uh, I thought one of his weakest songs, it's one of his biggest hits though, was Sad Songs. For me,
Okay.
Sad Songs was just, you know, sad. The original Sad Songs was done to a drum program. So,
Okay.
you know, for me to recreate a drum program was kind of, you know,
Boring.
whatever.
To
Actually,
paraphrase
when it
what
came
Elton says, boring.
boring, boring, yes.
Yeah.
But when it came down to it, though, in the end, by the time we got to 1992 and we had the girls as the backup singers, Sad Songs became more of a kind of gospel tune, and
Yes.
we took it right away from the original recording. It was so different from the original recording as a live song, and I think in the end I probably grew to like it. But when we first started playing Sad Songs, it was my least favorite song.
Any funny memory from that tour or any other tour that you played that you can really you can talk about?
Well, yeah, there is that as well. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on my confidentiality agreement, but um, I don't know. There was so many. Um, Scariest moment on the 85-86 tour, flying from Toronto to Montreal.
Okay.
Actually, no, flying into Toronto. So we had a situation. We were in Dallas and we were playing the CNE, the Canadian National Exhibition Centre, open air show at the original CNE in Toronto that night. And we had a private plane. We had actually we had the Dallas Mavericks, the basketball team plane, and we were flying out of Dallas Love Field. We were at the time we were staying at Dallas for most of the shows that were close, and then we were going to Toronto, and then we were going to play the CNE, and then we were going to fly from there to Montreal to stay for several days in Montreal and play the entertainment center in Montreal. But we were on the runway and we got a notification that there was a really, really bad storm front between us and Toronto. And here we are in the southern United States and we're flying north, and there's this massive storm coming through. And we were told that no planes were going to be allowed to take off to the northeast from Dallas Love Field. And the pilot came back and told Elton, I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to make the show. And Elton said, file a flight plan for Los Angeles, and then when we're in the air, turn north. And the
Oh
pilot said,
my.
are you sure we're okay with that? And Elton said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. If you think we can fly through it. And they said, well, it's not going to be fun, but we think we can get it. We can do it, but if we were a commercial jet, we would be grounded. He said, yeah, but you're a private jet. So this conversation went on, and Elton said, we've got to get to Toronto. There's a stadium full of people waiting for us to play. So we took off and pretended to go west. And then we turned northeast and filed a new flight plan right through this storm system. And I have to tell you, it was the most frightening experience of my entire life. Now, Elton was probably by this time, probably taken a few things. So he was laughing his way through it. Shirley Lewis, our backing singer, was weeping. She was lying on the ground weeping that she was never going to see her daughter ever again. And the rest of us were just strapped into our seats, green and petrified. Just the whole plane was just doing this, completely going up and down, side to side. Needless to say, we made it. We landed in Toronto, by which time the show should have started 2 hours ago. That's how long it took us to get there, because we had to circumnavigate several really bad clouds. And an entire stadium of people had been sitting in the rain waiting for us to arrive.
Wow.
Incredible, really. Amazing. It had been raining so badly that the monitor console had waterlogged and fused. So they brought in a new monitor console, and they had this stupid tent over the top of it just to try and protect it. We arrived in. Elton walked straight on stage wearing his one piece. He didn't change into his stage clothes at all. Walked straight on stage and started playing. We jumped out of the bus straight on the stage and started playing with him. The show was a massive success, an absolutely massive success. The crowd went berserk, you know, even though we kept them waiting for 2 hours. The crowd went berserk. I mean, the Canadian crowds have always been fantastic. But and then we had to get to Montreal. We got back on the plane and flew straight back through the weather front that we'd just flown through to get there, to get to Montreal. By which time we got to Montreal, it was snowing. It was the first snow of the season in Montreal. I remember we arrived and we were on the bus going to the Four Seasons in Montreal. And I woke up the next morning and I opened my curtains and there was a foot of snow. But yeah, that was probably the most scary thing I've ever experienced in my entire life.
I bet. I bet. I don't know if I could have been able to fly on the second plane.
I do remember getting up in the next morning and going for a swim. And the Four Seasons has an indoor-outdoor pool.
Yes.
And it's connected by a little tunnel. And I remember it was still snowing. And I remember seeing the steam rising from the outdoor pool. And I swam from the indoor pool through the tunnel into the outdoor pool. And I swam a few laps in the freezing cold with the snow falling on top of the swimming pool. It was amazing. It was a surreal experience.
It is. It is. I've done it a few times. It is. Crazy. If you had to name someone you haven't worked with, but you really would like to work with, who would it be?
You mean like a bucket list
Oh
person?
yeah, something
Yes.
like that.
So my ultimate bucket list, actually, the ultimate bucket list would have been Prince.
Oh yeah.
Just to have even recorded with Prince would have been just, out of this world. Sadly, that's, long gone. We've lost a few people along the way as well, people who I really would have liked to have played with. Now, who would I like to play with now? Gosh. Really difficult. I'd like to have done an entire tour with Billy Joel.
That would have been so much fun, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now he's got this guy Chuck Berge, who I know. Chuck Berge. He's a good drummer. And of course, Liberty and I were good friends. So and we stayed friends. Haven't spoken to him in a long time. Who else? Neil Young. Neil Young. I would do anything to be able to play with Neil Young. But yeah, Neil Young would be an absolute bucket list. If he phoned me up and said, I'm doing a charity show, I would say, fly me there now. I would love to work with Neil Young. He's
And
such
why?
a dude.
Why?
Why? He's a Canadian treasure.
He is.
He's a national treasure. Come on. And he speaks his mind. And he and I have the same politics.
He does. He does.
You know, I'm a social democrat. I'm a lifelong social democrat. And he is always saying what I want to say.
He did. He did say it on our last election. Question about your drumming. If you had, what song would you consider you were the best you could be while you drummed it on an album or a tour or any? What song?
Wow. Elton song?
Or any song. If you have an Elton song, that's
Uh,
okay. We have
my
Elton
fa- my,
fans here.
my favorite album to record with Elton was Made in England. And it would be a toss-up between Believe or Man. And Man, I think, probably gets it, just for the simple reason that I'm going to have a hard time here now. Bob Birch.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm losing it now.
Oh, that's okay.
I'll hold it together. Bob was a genius because, you know, he also played saxophone. He also played piano. If you go and listen to the bass part on Man from Made in England, it's Bob at his very finest. I think there's that, and also there's one song off The Big Picture, which is actually the song The Big Picture. It's my second favorite song because, again, it's Bob's bass playing that was just stellar, just incredible, just so sensitive. Not a single note is out of place. And, you know, playing with Bob from 1992 through to 1998 was huge, huge pleasure for me because I always knew that he'd be right there. I mean, don't get me wrong, playing with David Payton was very similar as well. I mean, I loved David Payton's playing. I still do. And doing the 85-86 tour with Elton and with David was magic. It was just wonderful. Apart from the fact that David was one of my heroes because he'd worked with Kate Bush as well. And also he'd worked with the Alan Parsons Project. And all those guys were friends of mine and also people I looked up to as heroes, as session players. And so being able to work with David in 85-86 was wonderful. But then when the band kind of came back together again after Elton had taken his hiatus and Bob was in the band, there was a magic connection between me and Bob.
Yeah, that's a connection. It was,
yeah. And Man on Made in England, his bass playing was just amazing. And The Big Picture as well, the song The Big Picture.
Wow. I don't think any of us will listen to that song the same way ever again.
And
what
Man, we recorded with Elton, Bob. We recorded as a three-piece.
Okay.
With me playing drums, with Elton playing piano, Bob playing bass, and me playing drums. I think Davey might have played some acoustic guitar, but it was definitely the three of us playing it together, which made it really special. And then Paul Carrack played the organ. Elton regards Paul Carrack as being Britain's finest organist. Wow. So he brought him in to play on that.
What is your next project? What are you working on now?
Well, I'm doing a lot of corporate shows, as you know, because I came back from doing that corporate show. Although most of my corporate work disappeared, I should have had about 18 corporate shows this year. But in March, I did the last major corporate show, and then I did this one in October. But every other show, as soon as the tariffs and the whole, trade war appeared, all the corporations I worked for basically cancelled all of their shows because they're tightening their belts. They're, they're all seeing financial losses, and the first thing to go is entertainment. So unfortunately, I lost all of the all my corporate shows. But because the US dollar dropped on the international currencies, I actually ended up doing a lot of long distance recording. I did some work for some friends of mine in Australia. I did a theme tune for a guy in New Zealand. I did an entire progressive rock album for a band called Castanark in England. And I've got some friends of mine in New Jersey who just sent me a track to do today, later on. So I'm doing a lot of long distance sessions with various different people. No kind of major projects apart from this band Castanark. And I did a whole album for them during lockdown in 2020. They were a progressive rock band that had some success in the 1980s, and then the band split up and they all went their separate ways and got day jobs. And then in 2020, they were all furloughed and they weren't working. So their producer, sound engineer, said, well, why don't we record an album? And they asked me to be their drummer. So I played drums on that. I can send you a link to that album. The new album is very prog rock, but is only being released on vinyl. Okay. So the album we did in 2020 is up on Spotify, but I don't think this album, they're not going to put it on Spotify for a while because they're going to basically sell vinyl
the
album.
Vinyls.
Yeah, but it's a concept album. Like the whole of one side is all the songs are joined together, and it's 24 minutes of music, which we had to piece together across the Atlantic. But yeah, I mean, I've got a local project here with a guitarist friend of mine, a guy called Gary Talley, who's the original guitarist, lead singer from the Box Tops, who had hits in the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
We have a band here called the Rock and Soul All Stars with actually with Dave Santos, who played bass with Billy Joel for many years. He's the bass player. And then a sax player, singer called Steve Nieves, who is out with, is he out with Kenny Loggins? No, he's out with Messina. He's on the road with, Messina from Loggins and Messina. And the keyboard player is a guy called DeMarco Johnson. So we've been rehearsing on and off for a while, but it's just for local shows, you know. It's not really for money.
It's fun though. You have to have fun sometimes. Cannot work all the time.
The Rock and Soul All Stars is all about the groove. It's all about, well, most of the music we're playing is in a kind of Memphis, New Orleans style. So it's got that kind of Cajun style to it. It's all about groove. It's all about, you know, enjoying ourselves, really.
And you still do your bicycling?
Oh yeah,
when the temperature is good.
Yeah, I know. My cycling buddy came back from, I think he was in Oklahoma, and he said, well, the weather's not great this week, but let's get together towards the end of the week. So we're gonna get together. Yeah, I've been missing it because I've been out on the road for 3 weeks, but my bike is in the corner here waiting to go back out.
And did you do you finished your September challenge for kids cancer also? You do that every year.
I do that every year. This is my 8th year. Yeah, and thanks to everybody who donated, I exceeded my $1,000. I like just over 1,000, and I did 495 miles, I think, in the end.
Amazing.
They sent me a certificate, so I did more than 400 miles, and I raised more than $1,000, which is what I wanted to do this year.
Perfect. Will you still do it next year?
Yeah, I hope so.
Hope so.
Hopefully, it will keep me fit, you know.
Well, that's a great cause, and I'm happy to share everything about it when you post it.
Yeah, thank you for that, because it really did help. A number of people stepped up and donated, and I was very grateful. Yeah, because, you know, children's cancer should not be something that happens. Children should not be dying from cancer.
Absolutely agree. Thank you, Charlie. Do you have any wisdom words you want to leave the fans with?
Oh, well, I think more than ever, it's important that people follow their dreams. Life is too short, you know. Most of the time, we get towards the end of our lives, and then we suddenly realize life is too short. You know, when we're in our 20s and 30s, it's like, oh, it's way ahead. You know, it's way, way ahead. But it catches up with you pretty soon, and you've got to try and achieve your bucket lists. I think it's, you know, it's important. I think we all learnt a lot about that during lockdown, actually. You know, what we wanted to do and what we couldn't do. It was, and I think a lot of people have said, you know, since then, they've said, okay, life is too short. We need to get on and do things.
I totally agree with you. We see the end at one time, and we need to act on it.
Yeah, I think so. And this is why, really, I mean, I want to carry on playing drums as much as I can. But, you know, physically, I mean, somebody sent me a track. There's a guy who teaches in England. He sent me a song that I'd played on in 1981. And he asked me, how did you play this feel? And then how did you come out of the drum fill and carry on playing the feel? Because I'm having trouble doing it. And I thought, okay, I'll play along to the song. This was a Judy Zook track.
Okay.
In 1981. So it's very high energy. And I thought, okay, I'll play along to it and I'll record just the drums so I can show him what I did. Well, I started playing and I managed maybe 30 seconds of it. And I was completely out of breath. And I thought, wow, how did I manage to play this entire song in 1981? But I did manage to finally create a clip that was kind of showed him what I did. And he said, oh, thank you, that's very useful. Because he was teaching somebody else how to play this song.
Okay.
But I sent an email to him saying, I've no idea how I played that. I have no idea. I mean, I was 26, 27 years old, but
Well, there's your answer.
where did that energy come from?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for spending an hour and a few minutes with me. And I wish you good luck and happy bucket list uh, for the rest of your life. I hope you have fun and you realize your dreams.